Hi Mortgage Coaches. This video tutorial is to show you how to put together an adjustable rate mortgage. For today's tutorial, we're going to go ahead and use a 7-1 ARM. So that's going to assume it's fixed for 7 years and it's going to adjust every year thereafter based on whatever index you've chosen and any margin associated. So we'll show you how to set up the basics on that, and then I'm going to show you how to go a little farther into it if you want to customize an adjustment schedule. That's going to be towards the end of the video, but in the beginning, if you watch the first couple of minutes here, that should give you the full detail on creating your adjustables if you don't want to customize. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to name this one. This is going to be a 7-1 ARM. And then I don't need an upfront premium for this. This is just going to be a conventional loan. So I'm just going to put in my down payment percentage. Let's say this is a 10% down. And for the rate we're putting here, this is going to be the note rate on the ARM. So let's say we can get 3.5 right now. The term is going to be the full term of the loan. So we're putting, this is a 30-year term, even though it's a 7-year fixed loan. It's still got 23 years of fully amortized payments that are going to come after the recast after that 7-year point. So we need to make sure and put the full term in here so it knows that it's going to be fixed for 7 years. Then it's going to continue on for the rest of the loan. Now finally, we need to select the loan type. So we're going to select ARM, and you'll notice that on the left side we now have a new caret here for the ARM detail. So when we hit next, it's going to ask us for the caps and adjustments. So for this particular scenario, let's assume that this is a 226 loan. So when you look at your rate sheets, you'll see 7-1 ARM, you'll see 2/2/6, or you might see 5/2/5. There's a couple of common variables that are used there. For today's discussion, I'm going to do a 226. And I'll show you where those end up. So those are all rates, which means they're going to go in these rate fields. So there's one of them, there's a second one, and then there's a third one right there. So the first number in the series, that's the first 2, goes right there. The second number in the series is the second 2. And then the third number, the 6, is actually the life cap, but we're asking for a max rate here. So you're going to want to add your life cap to the note rate. If my life cap is 6 and my note rate is 3.5, that means my max rate is 9.5. Now, what are these other ones that I need to account for? The first adjustment month tells us what month we want this to basically reamortize. If this is a 7-year fixed loan, that means that it's going to actually recast the month after that 7-year period ends. So that's going to be month 85. Now, how often is it going to adjust? Now, this is told when you look at this, you look at your ARM on your rate sheet, you'll see 5-1 or 7-1. That 1 there tells you how often it adjusts. This actually adjusts every year. So a 7-1 ARM is going to be fixed for the first 7 years, then it's going to adjust every year thereafter. So my adjustment months here are 12. It's going to adjust once a year. Now, the margin you can get from your rate sheet, that's usually going to be about 2.25. And then your rate sheet should also tell you what index associated with this particular adjustable rate mortgage. For the most part, we're seeing a lot of 6-month LIBOR, 1-year LIBORs are still common right now. I'm going to go ahead and use the 6-month LIBOR. And then if you need to set a floor rate, you can. It's not a requirement. But the most critical part of this is to understand what this last part is, the scenario. Now, by default, we're going to adjust this to a worst case scenario. And if you read the text here, that kind of tells you what it does. But when we look at these numbers, what this is saying to me is if I choose worst case, that means at month 85, the first point at which it can adjust, it's going to adjust up to the first cap, which means we're going to start at that index plus margin, or start at the note rate and then add 2%. So we'll end up being at 5.5% at the first adjustment point. And then for each subsequent adjustment, so every year, because it adjusts every 12 months, we're going to continue going to the periodic cap. So it's going to go 2% up every time until it hits 9.5. So this is really only going to have a couple of adjustments before it hits its life cap. But you can imagine what's going to happen here is at the 10-year point, you're going to be at the max rate of your loan, which means you've now got 20 years at the max rate. This is going to result in a fairly high APR. If you want this to match what your loan origination system does, you would want to choose best case. Now I'm going to leave this at worst case for right now because I'm actually going to add another loan product here so we can do a comparison between best and worst. So I'll add another product, and this one's going to be 7-1 best case. And I'm just going to copy the one I just did, so I'll copy that 7-1 ARM. That was a worst case. And I'm just going to go into my ARM detail, and this time I'm going to choose best case. Now when you do that, your payments are going to be the same because during the fixed period they're identical. The part where there's changes is what happens after the fixed period. And if we were to go and take a look at the preview right now, we will see that the best case one actually the worst case one has a really high APR. That's what I was telling you about. It has a majority of the payments at the life cap. Whereas the best case one, this should look more like your LOS. Your LOS doesn't even try to future cast on what the ARM is going to do. It just goes index plus margin plus weighted closing costs. That's what we're doing here with best case. So if you wanted to match your LOS, you can do this. It is somewhat unrealistic, however. This is going to assume that at the first adjustment point, it's going to go down to index plus margin and stay there for the remaining life of the loan. No upward adjustment. So it's valid in terms of an APR here, but if you do want to show your client a more realistic case of what you think this adjustable rate mortgage is going to do, you can do that. So let me show you. We'll jump back over to our advice engine here. Now we've got a worst case, a best case, and now I'm going to create one called custom. So I'll add one more product. For product 3, I'll just copy that first one I did. And this one I'm just going to entitle 7.1 Custom Adjustments. And all I'm going to do is jump into the ARM detail here, and instead of choosing best or worst, I'm going to choose custom. Now this brings open a little modal that allows me to tell the system when I want this to adjust. So at month 85, let's say I only want it to adjust up a quarter point. You can see what that does here. And as we continue adding, so let's say the next one I want here is going to be month 97. Let's say I want to do a full point. You can see what it's doing with the rate here. Maybe my next adjustment, I don't want to show another adjustment until month 121. So at the 10-year point, maybe I want it to come up a full 2 points. And then let's say at maybe month 140 or so, I want it to go down a half a point. You can do negative points here and it will actually reduce the rate. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically creating this kind of sine curve looking adjustment schedule where this can go up and down over time. Certainly you could view what past indices have done to understand what this could potentially do over time. Not necessary for all of your presentations, but if you've got somebody that's really analytical and wants to get your take on what you think this ARM is going to do over time, you can certainly customize it in this fashion, and it will reflect in not only the APR, but in the amortization schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and close this out. Now that I've got my custom adjustment scenario in there, let's go ahead and preview again. So you can see my APR on this custom one is in between the two. So there's my worst case, there's my best case, there's my custom. I don't have quite as many payments at the max rate. And you can see that during the 60 months, these are fixed and they all look identical. So payments are the same all the way through the fixed period. But at the 15-year point, you can see this worst case is going to pay a lot of interest because it's at the max rate. The best case is going to pay the least amount of interest, and this custom adjustment one, because I did put some upward adjustment in there, it's going to pay more interest than the best case, but not as much as the worst case. So hopefully this helps you understand what these numbers are going to come up with. Now, if you want to verify your work, you can always look at the payment streams here. And you can see I've got 84 payments at this amount. Then I've got every 12 months it's adjusting. You can see it's adjusting 2% up each time until it hits the life cap. And then it's going to continue on at the life cap for the remaining payments on the loan. That's the worst case. For the best case, we're going to say 84 payments, nice and low at 3.5. And then after that first adjustment point, it's going to go just to index plus margin, and it's going to stay there for the life of the loan. So obviously, lower rate scale, kind of unrealistic, however. Now finally, our custom adjustment schedule, we set it to go a couple of adjustments here. You can see it goes up, 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 and then it goes down, and then continues for the life of the loan. So this is going to result, obviously, in that middle APR. So hopefully this helps out a lot. That last part there was kind of an advanced topic. Don't feel like you have to do customization on every one of these. Like I said, if you want it to match your LOS, choose best case. If you want it to be the most possible compliant, choose worst case. That's going to show your client the absolute worst case of what an ARM can adjust to. I like showing them next to each other. If I was to pitch this to a borrower, I'd probably show them best case so they can see the APR. But but I also show them a custom adjustment schedule or a worst case schedule just so that they can see what that could potentially look like. Transparency is everything, and part of the TCA is being transparent to your customer. This is a real easy way to give them a little bit of knowledge on a subject that people don't know a whole lot about. People are kind of scared of ARMs, so if you want to reassure your borrower a little bit, you can show them these different types of adjustment scenarios to help them understand what the potential impact is over the long term. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Contact our support team, support@mortgagecoach.com, if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to help. Thank you much. Bye-bye.